What's up, troops? Today we're going to take a look at Conflict of Nations World War III. We're going to go into the Beginner's Guide Part 2, so stay tuned. Back with Part 2 on the Beginner's Guide, and so you can see how now there are 5 countries in our alliance, or I should say coalition, rather. We do have India, who took over Bangladesh. I've taken over Cambodia. Philippines joined, as well as Thailand and Japan. I'm not sure if Thailand was in next time. So you've got 5 good, semi-close countries in the same coalition, which is a good start, right? That is going to ensure that you're a little bit more survivable. And then, of course, over in Africa, we do have a couple of people that have joined over here, but your coalition is limited to 5. So in order to survive, I told them to join a different coalition, and then depending on the way things go in the game. So Japan is taking North and South Korea. Philippines is going to take Brunei and Taiwan. I took Cambodia out. And then we're positioned on the borders to go after Myanmar. India has also come in. I'd like for them to take Nepal, get Kathmandu, and then push from this area, get ready to defend China. What I'd like to do is take Myanmar within the next 2 days, right? So what we're looking to do is have Thailand move troops over. But we're going to talk about a beginner's guide. So the first step is to get into a good coalition that's close to you to ensure survivability. That's step 1. Step 2 is to look at what you need in the short term in your game, right? Obviously, you want to have positive on all these resources, and if you're not, say cities have traded hands and you're negative on one, you're going to want to go and find the next city to take to put that positive, or build arms industries to boost that up. So, but what you're going to do is look into your research now. So if I look and say, I've already got motorized infantry units. That's what you start with. It's what you got on the map. And so the easiest way to level them up is to move them to this engine upgrade, right? So if I look, what they're going to do is they're going to attack at a 3, defend at an 8 against armored. So you can kind of read the stats. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? So the single biggest way that I can improve my situation is to go to this upgrade here with the 10 or so units that I got on the map. You start with 2 in each city, so you're usually going to have about 10 of them. And if I look, I've got 3 here, I've got 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Within the first day, you're going to double up, and basically you should have about 18 to 20 of these units in the second day where we're at now. So if I take and I do this upgrade here, now you're going to see I immediately go from a 3 to a 4 attack rating, and more importantly, I go from a defense to a 3.8 to a 5, which is going to give me a huge defense. And if I look down here in defensive mode, I've got all of these factors that would basically make me what would that be, a 1.5? That would be a 6.5 defense over here, basically. So, or almost a 6 defense. So, because you're looking at it be 1.25, so you'd have a 6.25 defense on these units. And if I had a 25% rating, now we're going to be looking good. Or I'd have a 5 attack with a 25% bonus. So I look and I say, what is the terrain that's close to me? Mountains are always going to be bad. Like, this is open, open ground. There's a forest here, so if I take this one, but if I go and look at the cities, right, and that unit right here, and now I look back and say, what would it attack at in a city? Right here. It's going to give me a plus 25% defense. So I'm going to be hitting other units at a 25% increase. So if they're at a 3.8 on 25%, that's going to give you basically almost a 1. They're going to be defending at about a 4.6, 4.7, somewhere in there. So you're automatically at a disadvantage. You have to overwhelm your opponent with more forces to get in there. Hence why I say, like, your first step is to go into your city tabs and to build those units. Right now, I haven't built anything else because we're going to go through a couple of things real quick on this part 2 of this beginner's guide. So that's step 1. You're going to want to get into your research and immediately on day 4 have enough rare. So I'm at 674, and then we have, let's say, 8 hours. So if I go to the market and I look, I only have 11 grand, but if I say what's for sale in here, they're selling it at 16.2, which is a premium, right? So if I go in, I can only afford 679. I don't want to overdo it because I don't want to be cash poor, but I'm going to buy some extra resources, and now to get me closer, it's going to take me 10 hours to get to my infantry upgrade, which is where I need to be. So someone needed some money. I'm getting 471 an hour, so in another 10 hours, I'd have about 9 grand saved, right? So I'm going to be okay on the cash side, and then once you start grabbing land, you're going to have more cash than you can spend. You'll start getting into the intel bar, kind of mid games, and that'll be in part of the mid game strategy. So now I have to look and say, what else am I going to need? I know that China is going to have at least one jet, right? And my troops are going to defend at a very poor rate, even though they'll be level 4. They're going to defend at a point 0.3, so that jet's going to be coming down and just raining. If I had 4 troops, that would be a 1.2. It's going to take them 10 attacks for me to kill it off. I'm going to need some sort of anti-air and some sort of tank, right? So it's an immediate way you can boost on there. So we're going to go into the tank menu. Now, I'm already started my T-80 progress, and if I look at the stats on there, it's going to defend against choppers at a 1, but nothing against the jet, so I have nothing. Like, there's nothing that I have in my arsenal right now that will take out planes. But now you're talking about knocking down somebody at an 8 on troops, right? So whereas before, if we just have troops, it would take 2 infantry units to equal what 1 tank could do. And then, as you build your stack, right? And the stack is when you combine all your units together. At some point, you will lose efficiency in that stack. What I mean is when you get to 8, 9, 10 units, if you don't have a variation of units in that stack, if you don't have, like if you have 8 infantry units, it's going to go and it's going to only make them 70% effective. So you need to stagger your stacks out, have like 2 infantry, 2 tanks, 2 AA, whatever on the board you need for that particular stack. So we're going to be adding tanks in. Well, now I have to deal with air in the short term. Like I'm still looking at short term. So we have already researched, remember yesterday's video, we've brought out the mobile anti-air. And if I click on that, now we're going to be, click on that and go into air. Now we're going to be taking care of jets at a 4, right? And then if there's like 4 infantry stacks, it's a 1.2. You'd have a 5.2 against jets. It's only 3 trips for that jet to try to strike before you're going to take it down. And now you're going to start building missile defense too. You really don't have to worry about missile defense in the early game unless someone's golding, and if they're golding against you, it's just not going to matter anyway, right? So someone who gold is, you're just going to basically be like GG. You're going to just try to turtle up a little bit, cover your cities, and then launch back out. It's hard to produce these. They've got to go all the way through here to basically, you can stop right here and just do ballistic missiles, basically. You don't have to put chemical or nuclear on top of them. They are more potent if you're like, if you haven't researched. So say like here, when you research high enough, you're going to end up, let me see where it's at. I think here, no. You'll end up, where was it at? Yeah, see on here, MBC protection, so they don't have it on your regular motorized infantry. It would be down here on your mechanized, and I believe it's, yeah, right here. That's when you can go to mechanized and swap over and hit to here. I don't recommend really hitting mechanized unless it's in your doctrine, which I think is a Western doctrine. But it doesn't factor in. If you have a good AA, you're not going to get missiled anyway. So, but you can get missiled on open squares if you don't have an AA with you. So that's why I always prefer and say, number 1, you want to raise your infantry. 2, you want to add tanks, and 3, you want to have a decent air support before you move out. So now that we've actually, whoops, sorry about that. Now that we've kind of knocked out like our 3 basic needs on here, even if they bring a chopper out to you, right? Because you can get that on day 1. Even if they bring a chopper out, but you're sitting here on the mobile AA and you pop it open, you're going to be knocking down choppers out of the sky too, which gets really expensive really fast if you make your stacks right. So usually what I'd like to see is about 4 infantry, 2 tanks, 2 AA, and then you got to juggle what your efficiency of your stack is. That's a short term. So then now long term, what you're looking for a beginner's game is, what am I going to be needing later on in the game, right? Like, how do I defend against this? And if you look, like, we've got a lot of open ground sea-wise. So we've got, a huge border in here. If we were Mongolia, you're not building a fleet anytime soon, right? You're probably building air support, but we're going to have to defend air and kind of move towards naval. So now if I look in the beginner side on what I bring into the naval, I'm going to have to say, what's my best defense in here? So if I look at the ship and I say, what does a corvette do? right? And I read through, and it's really good in shallow water, but it's just defending against ships. There's really no good air attack. There's an air defense, right, in here. And then I look and I say, okay, end game, like where's the Corvette gonna be useful at? Where does it play at? And it's really just kind of an extra ship in your fleet. Um, if it's used on the high seas, it's vulnerable by 50% hit points, so it's like not a great naval unit. It's good early game and around the shores. If I look at a frigate, what does that do? It's an escort vessel, but it's kind of good all around, right? And look at this. It attacks planes at a 10, and it will protect against incoming missiles, and it's pretty decent against ships. Okay, against subs, it can actually attack buildings and people. So, pretty useful. If you run a frigate on the shoreline, you're going to be able to bang down some troops with it that are close, which is always good, right? Destroyer, if I take a look at it, it's a mid-sized. I can actually launch missiles on there. It reveals stealth, but it doesn't really. It's really good against ships and subs. Can knock people down on the shoreline, but it's kind of weak against air here. It's just a defensive unit. So if you're going to run it, you're going to want a frigate and destroyer combo, with one being really well against air units, the other being really good against other vessels. And so we pop open here on the, again, really good against other ships. So where the destroyer is just kind of a good all around, you're going to look at the cruiser being your banger for knocking out other fleet units. It's also going to be able to fire cruise missiles, which is fantastic. Every 12 hours, basically, it's a reload time. It carries 3, right? And then you look down at your aircraft carrier and say, well, what would you use on an aircraft carrier? It's got good range, but I really don't use them, to be honest. It just I don't find them to be very useful for what I do. So that's what you're going to look for as far as naval vessels. But again, we're going to stay in the early game. That's kind of a mid-game strat. We're going to be boosting up our infantry. We're going to be taking a look at our map. So I think on a strategy-wise, Myanmar is probably the next best one. We connect these borders. Right now we have our war line right here, right? And then a separate one all the way around here. So it does make sense to move, have him move some troops over, and we split Myanmar 3 ways between India, Thailand, and Vietnam. And then once we're staged out and we've taken this block away from Myanmar, now we can deal with China, who is the second one. It's a really big one. That's where we bring in the Philippines. We have the Philippines attack up in here, so they'll take Hong Kong and Shanghai. By that time, Japan will be ready to launch out, and Japan can take the top section there. And now China's being hit from 5 different directions. It doesn't, then you can take really big stacks into specific areas. So you can knock out Myanmar, China, and the last one is Mongolia, which we would all be coming up north to basically vet out. So that's going to take probably a week and a half to get all the units out and to have moved across all the land. So what I'm going to do is we'll look at the beginner's guide part 3 in probably a few days. So I hope you're doing well. I appreciate you guys watching the video. Always, I'm open to comments and suggestions in the comments box. Let me know. Thanks.